Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. This is part 3 of the speaker setting up video. We're actually going to set up some speakers on this. We've talked through room acoustics, we've talked through speaker requirements, so different types of speakers and positioning needs that they have. Acoustics, quite often there's issues with where the place you're sitting, there's no bass. If you stand in the corner of the room, there's lots of bass, and we've sort of talked about, damping the walls behind you and things like that to try and break up stunning waves, to try and get around that. And we've sort of shown you how certain speakers, like I say, need further out, some need further back. So armed with that, you can then sort of move forward to set your speakers up, and if you've got a general idea of what's going on. And I do get quite a lot of people who've actually got a speaker, sort of a room issue, where, like I say, they sit down and there's no bass, and if they walk around there's loads of bass, and they try and cure it by buying bigger and bigger speakers to try and create the bass, but actually what they're doing is creating more and more issues by not addressing the original problem. So you do need to address all these problems first. Now, actually listening to the system, I mean, usually when people ask me, what music do you listen to when you're evaluating a system? I don't like the idea of having specific favourite albums, like, oh, this one's got a good bass, this one's got a good clarity on it, this one's got a good vocal. Or listen to the how clear the guitar is on this. Or the classic one, the Love Over Gold, where we used to have people in the demonstration room just waiting for the end of the track so they could hear the last breaking at the end. That sort of thing. You need to just listen to the music that you enjoy. I mean, that seems to be the best way of doing it. If you're enjoying it more, then the system is better. More bass, more treble. You just get used to the actual tonality. You do tend to get used to it. Very simplistically, you do tend to get used to it. If it's wrong, then you don't. But if you can get the actual balance of a system fairly close to where it should be, more bass, more treble doesn't really. It isn't. That's not what's important. It's the musicality and whether or not you're actually involved in the music. To completely contradict myself, when I'm setting up a system, so setting the speakers, I do have specific stuff that I use, because what you're trying to do is find flaws in the positioning and trying to move the speakers so that things sound balanced. So it's almost like you're setting the bass and the treble on an amplifier. So I actually hate that sort of metaphor, but it's almost like you're setting the tone by moving the speakers in and out, finding that sweet spot where everything sounds linear. And I tend to use, it's getting a bit ropey now, but I've got an old Steve Miller band, Italian X-Rays, and track 3 on this first side, Daybreak, little instrumental. It's only quite short, but the main tune is done on a sort of keyboard bass, and it starts fairly lower mid-range and drops and drops and drops, and then plays a sort of tune very low down on the keyboard, and that's quite good because, like I say, when you're moving your speakers out, you want that keyboard to sound linear. If it sort of fades in and comes back as it drops, if it's sort of fading in and fading out as it's playing, then you've not got your positioning right. If it's really bloomy sound, you're really sort of big boom and sort of everything's got like a fuzz around it. You need to keep moving the speakers out until it sounds clean. So that's really good for that. I've got that on CD. It's really, I think our cat had a go at that at one point. And then similarly, once we're getting quite close by using the Italian X-Rays, I tend to use Thomas Dolby, first track, first side, Dissidence. I mean, this is an album I've used since it came out in, I hate to say, 1984, as a demonstration album, which is just very well recorded and it's very dynamic. And Dissidence has got sort of bass guitar and bass drum working together, and if you can sort of get the positioning so that that's sounding nice and clean, and it sounds like a bass drum and a bass guitar and bass drum together. If you can get it sounding like that, then you've got the sort of balance fairly close, actually, because it's actually quite difficult to achieve that on this. If I'm sounding a little bit out of breath, it's because it's something like 34 degrees in here at the moment. We're having a bit of a heat wave, and yeah, we're not used to it in the UK. It's not something that happens very often. So I've got me, I'm sorry. Anyway, once you've sort of got the speakers so they're sounding balanced, sort of, it's not all the bass that you're sort of listening to, but the first thing to get right is the bass way. And might be like it's sounding linear, sounding nice and dynamic. I then sort of, as you'll see when I do the video, I move things forward with everything pointing down the room, and then I start doing the toe in. I tend to use for this Fleetwood Mac. This is again a little ropey copy. I think I bought this on Wigan Market a long time ago. Use landslide of this, which is just Stevie Nicks, a couple of guitars. Very sort of, very nice big open acoustic on it. And what you're trying to do with that, it should sound nice and clean. The guitar should sound like guitars. I actually had a customer who'd upgraded his cables, and he said, I didn't realise there was a bass guitar on landslide. I said, well, there isn't a bass guitar on landslide. And what this cable has sort of altered the balance of the system so radically that one of the acoustics, the top E string, sounded like a bass guitar. So that took a bit of fixing. But it's, yeah, so it needs to sound nice and clean. Both guitars need to be really clean and easy to position. And the vocal, I mean, Stephen, it's got a very distinctive vocal, so that's quite good. So as you're sort of moving, as you're toeing in and moving the speakers that way, you're trying to focus everything in. And this is quite good for that, because it's very simple. Well, it's not simple actually. When you listen to it, it's a very complex recording, but it's a very simple two guitars and one vocal. So that tends to be the one I use. But like I say, if you're trying to evaluate a system, once it's all set up and you're trying to listen to different equipment, I wouldn't say it's a good thing to have specific records to do that. We just put something. I tend to say to customers actually when they're coming in, it's good to use something that you know well, that you enjoy, something that you know well that you don't particularly like, so you know it, but you've not really got any expectations of it, and that's quite a good thing to do when you're actually evaluating a system. If it makes you like that album, then it really is working well. So that's the way I do it. I know people have different views on this and different ways of doing it, but that tends to be the way I do it. So whether I'm going to do the actual speaker setup today, because I'm losing the ability to speak properly, whether I'll do that today or whether I'll see if it's a bit cooler tomorrow up here, I'll see. But yeah, that's the first part. Next part will be actually setting the speakers up, which I've not figured out quite how to do it yet, but it should be interesting anyway. So here we go. Right, so here we go. I've set up a bit of a system. I'm going to use the Ophidians. I mean, these, as we were talking about before, these have got a sort of slow rate sort of port on them, so they're theoretically not as difficult to place as some. Generally in the room it's best if you can try and get the speakers out as far as you possibly can. Obviously it's got to be suitable for if it's a main room that everybody's using, then you can't go too mad. But speakers usually sound better sort of image wise if you can move them further out. So I tend to move as far as I can while still maintaining a good sort of balance in the bass. I always start with them pointing straight down the room. What I've done there, I've measured. I don't do a lot of measuring actually, particularly in a room like this where there's things aren't quite equal. I mean, what I've done here, they're actually 6 foot 6 apart, so they're 2 metres apart, centred on the fireplace. I've not used side walls as a reference because I don't think it's sometimes better actually if you don't have equal distances to side walls. So this distance here, you sort of better really if that's slightly unequal. And obviously we've got a slightly unequal, we've got a big space there, and then we've got a damp space, but like I said in the previous video, we've allowed for damping by using the rock wool panel up there. So it's sort of equally damped either side. So you start with them pointing straight down the room. They're sort of pushed fairly well back, which will be too close, but if you can sort of hear the progression of the balance, it does sort of help really. I'm going to start, just going to set up a bit of a system. Got an exposure, can't remember the name of that, it's a brand new model, I can't remember the number of it. It's the 3150 possibly, is that what it's called? I'm terrible on numbers. New exposure amp, exposure phono stage, and got a planar 8 on. I was going to have a listen to this. This isn't something new to the UK, this is an Upper Constance turntable which I've been sent to evaluate. It's very interesting actually, really. It's not going to be that, it's going to be sort of planar 8 money, but it's nicely engineered. Unfortunately they forgot to send me a belt, so I can't actually put it on, so that's for another day. So we're using planer 8. I'm going to start off with Italian X-rays, Dawn, what's it called? A track? Can't remember. Oh, sorry, Daybreak. Track Daybreak, which is the one which has got the sort of keyboard base. Obviously I'll have to alter the video a bit so you can't actually hear that when I'm setting up, but that's what I'm going to be using, so the bass drops, and what we're trying to do is trying to get a sort of linear bass sort of sound off it. Right, so I'll set the camera up to where the sort of seating position, so you should be able to see what's happening with the speakers. This is the theory of it. I've not tried this yet, but this is the theory of it. So hopefully, if I leave that there, it should be good. Okay, so we've moved them out quite a way now, so they're probably about a metre out at the moment, and it's started to the bass has decreased, but it's actually got to the point now where it's probably gone down too far. It's starting to sound the upper bass is starting to diminish a little bit, and it's starting to sound like there's a bit of a hole in it. So what I'm going to do is slightly refine it back and just move them back slightly a little bit, and just see if that sorts things out. These are quite clever actually, because they have actually got another driver inside, so they do have quite a major bass output actually. If you can see, they're not so fussy because of the Airflex port. They are capable of quite a lot of bass extensions, so they sort of need to be sort of carefully placed. And you notice I've not got the spikes in it at the moment. That's just frees them moving around. That's kind of the last thing you do with the spikes. And that just basically any way you get the speaker will be correct, and the spikes will just make it better. It isn't a case of once the spikes are in, you'll then have to move it around again. It does. I always sort of assumed you probably would need to do it and some more final tweaks, but it always seems to be correct. Once you get the speakers to the right place, you just improve the sound once you put the spike in. So I'm going to move this back slightly, and as soon as I've just got that balance right, so I've been moving in quite big chunks forward, and I can be just gradually moving back just to find that sweet spot. Okay, so I think that they seem to be nice and balanced on that album, so which is just a sort of soft, ploddy bass note. It's a bit of a boring track. It's not a great track to be honest, but it is good for setting things up. It's not one of Steve Miller's finest moments, I don't think. So that's that one. So what we'll do now is we use Thomas Dolby. Because this is the one with the drum beat and the bass guitar sort of working together, so this is more about the dynamics. So we're going to just make sure that these are still impactful and not blurring the bass. In theory they should be correct, but sometimes if you put this on you find you just a little bit of fine tune, gives you a bit more ability to fine tune them a little bit more as well. So Put this on and see how it goes. Probably won't need to put this on for very long, hopefully. Right, yeah, it's nice and tight. Just move them forward very, very slightly, probably only just about another inch. Just there was a slight bloom on the sort of base sort of drum, and just that, even that little inch has just made a difference. Now the next thing to do, so we've got the sort of this totally quite well balanced now. Now it's a case of just sort of towing them in a little bit and just working out the best place, you know, the little sweet spot for stereo image. There's a few. Some of this comes down to personal taste. If it's just one person listening, then sit in the central position, because you want the sort of triangle between speakers and main seat. I mean, these are 2 meters apart, and it's 4.5 meters to the listening position, which is pretty much it's a pretty good ratio, really. The more you angle them in, the more focused things will be. But you'll find if you focus it too much, it's only going to sound perfect in the one seating position. Sometimes it's worth just compromising the seating position just slightly, because if there's perhaps 2 or 3 people who want to listen, yeah, just open things up a little bit and just make it so it spreads a little bit better. You don't often lose much in the way of focus, but it's just a case of take that into. Otherwise, if it's very focused and you're off. And you're off angle a little bit, then you tend to find the treble disappears, or it just sounds a bit sort of disjointed and a bit weird. So just take that. So it's worth, if you think there's going to be more than one person just sat listening, then just try moving around on the chair a little bit and just make sure it still sounds sort of open. You still get a centre image. I mean, that's the main thing. Different speakers are different on this. I mean, you notice I've got the treble units inwards on these. I would prefer them inwards on Ophidians. Some speakers are better with them out. Like the neat Toyotas and things like that, I tend to prefer them with the treble units out. It depends on the dispersion characteristics. The treble, I find that these just sound a little bit more together with them on the inside. It's very subtle. And for some reason I think they look better with it on the inside. It looks a little bit more symmetrical and balanced, really. It's really hot in here. It's probably 34-35 degrees still. I mean, I did the first part of this video yesterday and it was really hot, and I thought, oh, I've got to leave it a day just let things cool down. It hasn't done. If anything, it's warmer today, so yes. So right, so I've got to change album again. We'll go to where is she? Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac. So this is Landslide, which is, like I said, just 2 guitars and vocal. So we're looking for the sort of keeping the clarity, keeping the sound stage, focusing the vocal, but not focusing it, like I say, not focusing it too much. You just find that balance where it just suits the speakers, because some speakers got quite wide dispersion, some of us are very, very narrow, some ribbon treble units. Well, not the neats actually, but some ribbon treble units are almost pin sharp with the when you bring them in, all of a sudden they click and it sounds brilliant, but off axis they can sound really dull. So it depends on the speakers. These are quite wide dispersion. Things like Kudos and whatever, I've got Scan speakers, I think they've got quite wide dispersion, so you tend to find you can focus it on the seating position, but it still sounds good across the band a little bit. So we'll put this on next, and this should help us focus in the actual toe-in angle. Some people just prefer to have them fired down the room like this, but I found very few speakers that actually like to be fired down a room. And it also tends to be, if there's anything on the side here, any furniture or anything like that, you tend to have more effect from furniture. So unless you've got a completely sparse room, which we've already said is a bad idea, straight down the room tends to sound a little bit unbalanced because it's sort of interacting with things like the radiator over there, got the hi-fi table on this side, which is different. So there's a reflective surface there, a dead surface there. But if you fire them in a little bit, it tends to bypass all that, and you get a cleaner sound off it. So yeah, that's a bit of CVNX, and that should help us focus back in. Obviously, I need to take this one off first, getting ahead of myself. So let's get Thomas Dolby away. And finally, like I say, we'll put the spikes in, and that should be spot on now. I must admit, I don't think a lot of people take as much time as I do setting speakers up. I think I'm a little bit obsessed with it, but it does pay dividends if you can get the setup spot on. The speakers just come alive. And a lot of problems that people have in rooms tend to be just speaker placement. We just slap them down somewhere and expect them to perform. And it's never really the case. They need careful positioning. They need to, like I say, understand the acoustic, understand the speaker's requirement, and then play with it until it's absolutely in the best position. I mean, if you're in a room where you're sort of living in the room with others, and it's like my main listening room at home, TV's there, the family uses it. So I've had to just find something that will work close into a wall, because there's no way I could have speakers 1 metre, 2 metres into the room in there. It wouldn't be popular for us. It wouldn't be popular at all. Okay, so we'll go with Stephen X on slide. Fairport Convention. Fleetwood Mac on slide. Right, here we go. Right, so we've got them, we've moved them inwards, tone wise. So they're actually, at the moment, they're pointing straight at the listening position. So if I sit in the middle of the settee back there, the treble units are actually meeting pretty much around where my head is. I did notice as we moved them in, when they were sort of, the movement previous to the last one, there was quite a deep, the image was slowly expanding into sort of forward into the room and backwards. And as soon as we got them pointing straight at me, the image sort of semi-collapsed and became very much just between the speakers. It lost that sort of openness that there was before. So what we'll do, just edge them back a little bit and just find that sweet spot again, and should be good to go. Should be good to go. Right, that seems to be it. As soon as I move them slightly out, like I said, the image sort of became much more three-dimensional. And I've noticed if I moved along the chair, it still held the sort of centre image and still held the clarity. So I'd say they're absolutely spot on there now. So next job is to put in the spikes. I've also got level to make sure everything's, because what you want to be sure is that they're both pointing in a linear way down the room. You don't want one sort of firing up and one firing down, because you'll get a different response. So put spikes in, level up, make sure everything's rock solid, that it's not moving anywhere, and make sure everything's level as well. That's quite crucial with speakers. It's as far as much difference that does make, really. So we'll do that. Yeah, okay, let's do that now. Okay, so we're now far enough away from the wall, we're towed in correctly, we've got spikes on, levelled up, nice and rigid. Normally you would, if you're setting this, there is like a little lock nut on the spike which you get a little spanner on it and just tighten it up. I don't tend to do that with demonstration speakers because they're constantly moving and I don't want to be unfastening things with spanners all the time because you end up loosening, sometimes you end up loosening the little collet that they go into, so I tend to just as tight as I can, finger tight, and that usually holds it. But like I said, mine at home are tightened down, but on demonstrations I tend not to worry too much. Okay, so just a final listen, just to make sure everything is as should be, and there we go, I think. Right, so I'm now sat in the listening position, and this is just showing how the speakers have ended up. I put the camera back onto normal view because I sort of opted early on to use wide angle because filming from this view wasn't really showing what I was doing. It wasn't actually showing the movement of the speakers at all, so I offset it to put it on wide angle, which kind of distorted things, but it showed the procedure, so I thought that worked better. So yeah, when I'm setting the toe in, you can see a certain amount of the inside edge of the speaker. Now the trick is to just keep that equal on both. As you count them in, just make sure that stays the same. So then you've got the same angle of toe in. I used to use tape measures. I think if you're not used to doing it, using a tape measure and measuring the sort of distance to back wall on the left and the right hand side of the speaker. So but on both sides, and then you'll get the angle as well. But it gets very complicated. And I think sort of usually doing it visually seems to work out quite well. I've sort of done it visually and then checked it afterward, and it's usually fairly well spot on. Yep, so there we go, it's all set up. I think that's all you need to know about speaker setup really. I think can't think there's anything else particular. I think if your room's heavy with furniture, I've had situations where people have had a speaker that's sort of say behind a chair arm, and they're sort of worried that it's obscured. As long as you can see from your seating position, I mean it is a bit of a compromise, but it's not as much of a compromise as you would have thought. If you can still see the treble unit from your seating position, usually you're okay. Things like bass units aren't quite anything like as directional, so if the bass unit's obscured a little bit, it's not too bad. It's sort of I've had situations like that before, and I've in people's houses where you've had to play around a little bit with where the furniture is. I wouldn't worry too much about it really. It's in the perfect world, you'll have the perfect triangle, nothing obscuring. You'll have a nice dead room. You'll have a speaker that works exactly where you want it to go. But the world isn't perfect, and particularly with hi-fi systems, there's actually a lot of things to sort of work that can work against you or for you, and it's just making the best of what you've got really. But yeah, so actually sounded great. These are really good. These little Ophidian Mambos, these are the Mark II, which are really good actually. I'm really impressed with them. And that's been run, like I said, by the exposure, the planar 8, and the exposure phono stage. And one day we might get to listen to the opera consonance turntable as well, but that's for another video, I think. Yeah, and the sweat is pouring. I'm not a person who sweats usually, but my God. Going for it today. Right, so I hope you liked the video. It's going to take a bit of putting together this because I'm going to have to speed things up and slow things down and try and cut out the music somehow. Because I have actually sat and set these up properly. I'm not pretending to. I have actually gone through the whole procedure and done it. But I'm going to have to edit it so that YouTube doesn't get angry with me for playing music. So hopefully at double speed it won't recognise anything. So we're going to do it that way. Yeah, if you've any questions, give me a call at the shop. I'll put the email address if you want to email me. See the website. We've got things I'm just rewriting the website at the moment, but the old website's still up, so still things on there if you want. We do have mugs for sale. If you want a Cheshire Audio mug, give us a call. It's really nice, big mug, big cup of coffee on it. So yeah, there you go. I'm gonna go and get a drink and go and sort of expire downstairs. Thank you very much. See you soon.